After 47 years of marriage, I think I know what happened. Let me start by telling you something that might surprise you. I almost didn't make it. 47 years, but almost didn't do it. Not because my wife was difficult. If you knew her, you'd know that's the truth. And it wasn't because we were incompatible. I think it was because I walked into my marriage with no idea what I was doing, with no model for what a real marriage looked like. And I had an exit strategy already in place before the honeymoon was even over. See, my parents divorced when I was about 7. My father remarried, and that didn't go well either. So I grew up never once really seeing a loving couple. I never saw what it looked like for a husband and wife to actually choose each other day after day. So when I got married, I was essentially improvising. I was just making it up as I went. My wife was different. She came from a solid home, not perfect, but a reasonable home life. And she believed that marriage was for life, and she meant it, not as some romantic idea, but as a real commitment that she had made and she intended to keep. I was in the Navy when we met. She was beautiful. I was having fun. My thinking at the time, if you could call it thinking, was pretty simple. If this doesn't work out, we'll get a divorce. That's what most of my family did. That's what most of America was doing. It was just what people did when things got hard. See, early in our marriage, during one of our arguments, I said exactly that. I said, let's just get a divorce. She looked at me and said, why is divorce always your answer? She was deadly serious. I didn't have a response. But that question stayed with me. It's still with me 47 years later. Because what she was really asking me was, did you mean what you said at the ceremony? Till death do us part? Did those words mean anything to you? Honestly, I said them without really hearing them, unfortunately. And that's more common, I think, than most people want to admit. Here's what I've discovered over nearly 5 decades of marriage. Can't believe it's been that long. Watching our own relationship and watching the marriages of people around us. Most couples start with a physical attraction, maybe a hobby or two that they have in common. That's it. And for a while, the honeymoon period, that feels like enough. But unfortunately, what happens, guys? Real life shows up. Work, children, disagreements, in-laws, bad days that can stretch into bad weeks. And the version of your spouse you fell in love with turns out to be a full human being with their own history, their own wounds, their own way of seeing the world that is sometimes completely different from yours. Marriage is two sinners trying to make a go of life. And that's the most honest definition I know. And most young couples have no idea what commitment actually means when they say I do. And it's not because they're bad people. It's because they're young. Because commitment isn't something you understand until you've been tested by something that makes you want to quit. My wife never quit. Even when things were hard enough that she packed up the kids and went to her parents' beach house for a while just to put some distance between us. She wasn't leaving. She was protecting the marriage by giving it some room to breathe. And it took me time to understand the difference. But even then, I was smart enough to know that she wasn't leaving me. Divorce was never in her mind. And somewhere in all those years, I think I began to understand what happened to marriage. My wife and I expected marriage to require sacrifice as we grew. We expected hard times. We expected disagreements. We expected seasons when money was tight and life wasn't fair. What we didn't expect was for marriage to make us joyful and blissful and happy every day. Somewhere along the way, I think our culture has flipped those expectations upside down. Marriage used to begin with commitment and then hopefully produced happiness. Today, I think it often begins with happiness and survives only as long as the happiness lasts. Think of the country songs, they're all written about divorce. As our faith grew, though, everything started to change. We began to understand what Scripture actually says about how a husband and wife are supposed to treat each other. Excuse me. Texts like Ephesians 5 and the other passages, Colossians, etc., on marriage. We learned how the opposite sex views life, or at least to expect it, and how differently we process things. What motivates us, what hurts us. You know what I'm saying. Marriage became intentional. It's the only way it works, guys. You have to want to know these things about your spouse. It has to be intentional. For us, it still is. After 47 years, it still has to be intentional. One of the most important things I learned, and it took longer than I want to admit, is knowing when to end a discussion. Not rudely, not by storming out of the room, but knowing when to let the night rest without doing damage that takes weeks to repair. With this, I was a debater by nature. I wanted to win. I wanted to be right. But guys, winning never worked. Not once. Not in 47 years did I ever win an argument that worked out. What actually worked was really deciding to make the marriage work. Not hoping it would work out, not waiting to see how it went, but deciding. Because the decision changes how you approach everything that comes after it. It changes how you handle the bad days. There's going to be bad days. That's not pessimism. It's just the reality of two imperfect people sharing a life. When you've decided, you've stopped asking whether you're going to make it, and you start asking how. You start learning your partner, not to gain advantage, not to win arguments more efficiently. That's just the wrong approach. But to actually understand how they think. What makes them feel loved? What wounds them? What brings them joy? You start thinking about them at least as much as you think about yourself. That last part is not easy. Yeah, I'm still working on that. If I could go back, I guess, and say one thing to the young man in that Navy uniform, which was me, about what I would do to make marriage work, it would be this. You must understand this woman you're about to marry, not to gain sexual favor, but to make her an equal partner with you in living a life that will honor God. That's what I didn't know at 20-something. And that's what 47 years taught me. We decided to make it work. Everything else follows from that. See you next time. God bless.